Hello, my name is Murphy Sinsky, and today I'm going to be talking about the Great Plains and how mining has become a pivotal factor in the discussion of the Buffalo Commons. So first, I'd like to discuss the so what, the why of this type of study. We know that mining is an incredibly important economic factor to the United States. Not only does it bring in many jobs, but it also provides us with a lot of natural resources such as oil and gas and necessary metals in our society. So the question I'd like to explore is how do we transport the bison or allow them to move and roam through human influence? How are we going to allow these bison to be untouched by the mining in the Great Plains? In this project, I used GIS analysis to map out potential areas for Buffalo Commons habitat, as well as the potential for Buffalo Commons restoration. According to the CDC, in 2013, there was a reported 14,000 active mines in the United States. These are mines alone, which are greater in impact and size than wells, but you can get the feeling that 14,000 mines may not be as many as you thought. However, when you consider the fact that most of these mines are spread out in the Great Plains and the Appalachians, their impact becomes enormous. In 2014, Frac Tracker Alliance reported over 1.1 million active oil and gas wells, not including Texas, which would add another 300,000 or so. However, that data is incredibly expensive. Some of the states that I'll be reviewing include Colorado and Wyoming with 85,000 and 66,000 respectively, Montana and North Dakota with around 16,000 and 22,000 oil and gas wells respectively, South Dakota with around 500, and Nebraska with around 2,000 oil and gas wells. So to touch down on the Buffalo Commons idea and what exactly I'm talking about, we have to go back to 1987 when Deborah and Frank Popper first discussed the idea of conserving land in the Great Plains for bison restoration. This idea came through because of the rural depopulation and periodic disasters in the area. Younger people were moving out of the area due to lack of opportunities, lack of economic factors, lack of entertainment, things of that nature, as well as periodic disasters, such as natural disasters. With global warming becoming increasingly prevalent in our society, especially in the Great Plains, we do not necessarily know how this will affect the growing seasons, the crops, etc. Will there be more rain? Will there be less rain? Either way, there will be an extreme change in the weather which may cause disasters to the farming populations. So why not use bison as engineers to reconstruct the land in a sustainable way? One of the major articles that I came across when researching the issue of mining was an article by Naveen Savior from India called Environmental Impact of Soil and Sand Mining, a Review. In this article, he discusses how the main air quality issue with mining is dust particles, and that these large concentrations of dust particles can become a health hazard, exacerbating respiratory disorders such as asthma and irritating the lungs and bronchial passages. This not only affects human beings, but also animals, such as the bison. He continues on to discuss how most of the underground geological resources, aka minerals, are superimposed by above ground biological resources such as forests. This means that in order to reach the geological resources, we must dig and remove the biological resources, which kicks up dust particles, removes habitat, and cuts off migratory patterns. This is a major concern with the Buffalo Commons area and the bison. Another article I found discussing mining in North America by Brady Allred and Company called Ecosystem Services Lost to Oil and Gas in North America discusses how the development of new oil and gas wells can destroy as much as 10 acres of vegetation. When considering that there is over 1.1 million oil and gas wells in the United States, that's a lot of food and coverage that the bison have already lost. It also continues on to discuss that around 7 million acres of rangeland and cropland were given up to well pads and the necessary roads from 2000 to 2012. This is a lot of habitat destruction and a lot of disruption to the migratory patterns that will certainly affect the bison. Another interesting article I found that does not discuss bison in specifics, but rather grizzly bears by Alan Schallenberger out of the University of Montana, talks about how construction of roads and infrastructure as well as transportation systems have disrupted bears in this area. In his study, he found that approximately 70% of grizzly bears observed reacted strongly, more strongly than normal, to aircraft disturbance, and the same may be said for bison. There was also a reduction in movement patterns of bears as well as an increase in the destruction of habitat, certainly two factors that will play into the decision of the Buffalo Commons. This GIS model, used in order to show the agricultural factors affecting the decision of the Buffalo Commons in the Great Plains, takes into account a number of factors such as value per acre, average age of the principal owner, total cropland change, and subsidies divided by net profit. All of these related to whether or not this land will be viable use for bison and habitat restoration. Another model used to discover the isolation from malls, institutions, and businesses such as cemeteries will also be used in order to see what lands are viable for bison roaming and habitat restoration in the Great Plains, aka the Buffalo Commons. This GIS map of the agricultural factors in the Great Plains shows a clear path from Montana through Wyoming and the Dakotas into Nebraska and Colorado. The high values on agricultural numbers, so the green and the light green colors, represent areas of good positive values for the bison, whereas purple areas and pink areas represent low value for the bison. This GIS map, created from the earlier GIS model, shows again the clear corridor forming from Montana through Wyoming and the Dakotas into Nebraska and Colorado. The white colors represent a high value, which is positive for the bison. Although there is a dark area in western South Dakota, there are still clear channels around this area for the bison to roam. This map, which was uncovered by Frac Tracker Alliance, shows all of the U.S. oil and gas wells in the United States, minus Texas. As you can see, in Montana, Wyoming, the Dakotas, and Nebraska, and even parts of Colorado, there is still a clear channel for the bison to roam through the Great Plains. As you can see in this closer view of that previous map, although there are isolated oil and gas wells through this corridor, there is still plenty of room for the bison to roam. The two major oil and shale plays in northwestern North Dakota and northeastern Wyoming created enough space for the bison to slip through into South Dakota, Nebraska, and through Colorado. This U.S. oil and gas well locations point density map shows a clear channel still. The dark red colors represent areas of high density wells, such as locations like northeastern Wyoming and northwestern North Dakota. The green, whether it be dark or light, shows areas of low density wells, or areas where the Buffalo Commons may be possible. This corridor still exists for the bison to roam. So in taking those last three data plots that you saw in GIS, the isolation, the point density, and the agricultural factors, reclassifying them, throwing them into a raster calculator, we get the ideal Buffalo Commons placement in terms of mining and agriculture. This map shows the final placement of potential Buffalo Commons restoration and habitat in the Great Plains. The dark colors represent areas that are not ideal for the bison, and the lighter colors represent areas that are ideal for bison restoration and habitat reconstruction. As you can see, this channel from Montana through Wyoming and the Dakotas and into Nebraska and Colorado still exists and is still the ideal location for the placement of the Buffalo Commons. In summation, mining we know is an important part of our industrial culture in the United States. It provides us with many jobs and a lot of natural resources. Mining, however, does have a negative impact on the local ecosystem and beyond, something to consider. The Buffalo Commons, which is a major restoration idea using bison, would need to be planned around mines and wells for the sake of the bison and all of the habitat reconstruction. The bison clearly may have channels to move through Montana and across Wyoming, North Dakota and South Dakota, and into Nebraska and Colorado. There is a lot of future research that still needs to be done on this project. Observing bison movement and migratory patterns may help us channel how far away the mines and wells need to be from them. This will help us create a more accurate picture of their movement through the Great Plains. We also must consider that bison can be used to restore areas in which mines and wells have been abandoned, but at what point we do not know. Looking down the road, there will be new technologies for mines and wells that will reduce the environmental impact, which may come into play if we decide to use bison across this landscape. And finally, we must consider the potential for animal transport systems in areas in which mines and wells have created a harsh environment and will have a negative impact on the moving bison.